Hello and welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Scint.
I'm Axion.
And we are continuing our discussion of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows while we play through Final Fantasy V. So, are we in the dungeon to find anything in particular?
I mean, it's the end of the game.
So we are chasing down a monster of myth to slay. Do we have a special item for that?
Mostly we have lots of magic and lots of, Well, we do have the 12 legendary weapons.
Yes. We have found the artifacts to handle the myth, which segues nicely, if a bit forced, into our discussion today. The power of myths and artifacts, and honestly just the power stories themselves have. For example, without the power of story behind it, the Holy Grail is just a cup. And who would care about that?
I mean, I like a good cup.
Yeah, but this isn't like a fancy non-dishwasher safe one. Or if it's Indiana Jones, it's still not dishwasher safe because it's made of wood. Probably splintery too. But yeah, things pretty much only have significance because of the stories we attach to them, whether that be individually or culturally. And as we discover throughout Deathly Hallows, this is also true for the Wizarding world, where we're honestly first introduced to this with the tales of Beetle the Bard. And I mean, it makes sense to me that, considering Wizard Society is so separate from Muggle Society, that they would have completely different, like, fairy tales they tell their kids. But I find it surprising that there's absolutely no mention of them in any capacity until the very last book when the kids are no longer at school. Because, I mean, as a teacher, I cannot tell you how many times fairy tales get alluded to just in casual conversation, because it's a common touchstone for people to latch onto. So it honestly defies any sort of suspension of disbelief that not one kid in this school would have mentioned a very well-known to them fairy story, just as like a, hey, quick joke. But then again, that would require more planning to be put into the world building, and we don't need to go down that road again. Sorry, I think I lost my point.
So, the subject for today...
Yeah. I also find it interesting that Dumbledore chose to give the book to Hermione, who, you could basically guarantee at this point had no idea what the stories of Beetle the Bard were, even though, again, she's read basically every book in the Hogwarts library, but not one of them even alluded to this at all as being a thing. Even though, again, if she's read as many history books as someone like Hermione would have, there would have been some sort of comparison about... I'm gonna keep getting hung up on this. Anyway, the main thing that their attention is drawn to is the tale of the Deathly Hallows, which has been appropriated over the years to the point where when Victor Crumb, who is from Bulgaria, sees Xenophilius Lovegood wearing a necklace that has the Deathly Hallows symbol on it, he assumes that it means Lovegood is a devotee of Grindelwald, because Grindelwald had claimed such for his own personal sigil. Something parallels to the Nazi appropriation of the swastika here. Because as we find out, Dumbledore and Grindelwald did look very interestedly into the nature of the Deathly Hallows to see if they could find them before they had their falling out. So, people definitely put stock in these fairy tales, even in the Wizarding world, even those who would be seen as very powerful and well-respected, but, well, stories tend to have some grain of truth in them very often. If it comes to fairy tales, though, they're mostly morality stories to, teach a specific lesson, rather than here's a map of where to find the magical artifacts. But because enough people believed in the story to keep hunting down these things and find them, well, the Elder Wand becomes a very focal point of the story, with Voldemort never realizing until it's too late that Harry Potter has been the true master of the wand that he's been seeking the whole time. But it's not just the Deathly Hallows that become important over the course of the story, even though by the end of this book, Harry does have all three and then chooses to give up two of them and just keep the invisibility cloak. But we also see the importance of Voldemort's trophies, the things that he collected to show an important connection to the founding families of Hogwarts and just other important lineages, because why would you want to put your soul into, like, a sewing thimble? Except for the fact that no one would find it, which would make it smarter, but no one ever said Voldemort was immune to hubris.
In fact, we've repeatedly said quite the opposite.
Voldemort's the type who would cut off his nose to spite his face. Sorry.
If he had one.
That's the joke. But, yeah,
I just wanted to make a reference.
Even these artifacts, these other artifacts come back up in the course of the story with, remember earlier on in Chamber of Secrets, Dumbledore mentions to Harry that only a true Gryffindor could have pulled the sword of Godric Gryffindor out of the Sorting Hat. Neville pulls that off at the end of the book to behead Nagini and destroy one of the Horcruxes. Which, honestly, good for you, Neville. It's kind of nice to see Neville finally getting his due, because he has just been so abused the entire series by everyone. But, yeah, it's once again, these artifacts are significant because they were given that significance. They weren't just inherently significant. The sword would have just been a sword, but it was attached to one of the Hogwarts founders. Just like all of the other things that became Horcruxes would have just been, things. Like a diary, a cup, a locket, a tiara, a diadem if I'm going to get really finicky about this. Very valuable, I'm sure, except for the diary, but they wouldn't have been important until they were made to be important. If Voldemort had not chosen to make them into Horcruxes, they wouldn't matter. So, if Dumbledore hadn't been obsessed in his youth about the Deathly Hallows, Grindelwald might not have gone after them, and, well, the Deathly Hallows might be completely irrelevant and, missing. I'm not sure where the Elder Wand was before Grindelwald got a hold of it. I remember now, the wand maker that Voldemort has tortured to death for losing it. Yeah,
I was about to say, we get a flashback of him having stolen it from that one guy whose name I can't remember. The other wand maker who's not Ollivander.
Yep. Grigorovich. I think. But, yeah.
That sounds right.
This is what happens. I can't reach the book and I refuse to get up. But, yeah. So, not sure where it was before Grigorovich got it, but if people had not continued to believe in the myth of the Deathly Hallows, the Elder Wand would have lost its power, which is exactly what Harry chooses to do with it at the end. He doesn't want the reputation as the wielder of the Elder Wand, so he puts it back in the tomb where it can never be taken from him, so when he dies, it will have died. The wand's power will have died because no one can defeat its master anymore. Which kind of raises the question of who has the right to declare whether or not a myth continues to live. I mean, in Harry's case, you could probably make the case that yes, he does have that right because it's literally in his possession. You get to decide to do with your own stuff. But I'm sure people would disagree. Like, the Deathly Hallows have been a myth carried down for generations upon generations. Why does this one random kid get to destroy one of them completely? Of course, that didn't stop him from, destroying an entire hallway full of prophecies that will never be heard again. One of these days, we're gonna find a YA novel where the protagonist actually cares about collateral damage, and it's going to be groundbreaking. But I also think, the myths and artifacts appeal is part of why the Quibbler has not managed to go under yet. Because it seems to be all Lovegood does, but it's a labor of love, rather than something that he's truly dependent on for his living. And even though it's largely seen as a joke by most, they keep doing it, and honestly, Luna, having been raised in this fashion, sometimes has greater insight into a situation than Hermione, who's incredibly scientific and logical about everything. So there may be something to the whole lean into the myths of things, lean into the legends, and trust that there may be something more than what the facts are telling you. Which may be why Dumbledore gave her the book. Or it could have just been if he'd given it to Ron, Ron would have been like, oh yeah, I remember reading these, throw it in the closet.
I think that's a big part of it, is just since it's such a cultural thing for Ron compared to what it would be for Hermione or Harry being Muggle-borns, or Harry being Muggle-raised, rather. It's a completely different cultural touchstone for them, because it's something that they do not already have association with. Whereas to... Oh wow, that was a lot of damage. To Ron, to Harry and Hermione, it's these stories they've never heard, and they don't have the already present understandings of their childhood cultures, for lack of a better way to put this, getting in the way of what's hidden in the book. They don't have preconceived notions like Ron does of what these stories already mean.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest here. If someone gave me, a collection of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fanfiction and said there was a treasure map hidden in one of the stories, I would laugh at them. So, maybe there is something to that.
Well, it's also a matter of, yes, if some random person came up to you and did that, you would laugh. With good reason. But what if it was, say, your mentor teacher from back when you were in school? Would that...
I'd probably still laugh, because I remember I had a really similar sense of humor to my mentor teacher, and we got along really well, but I'm pretty sure I would take this as, oh no, you've been reading too much 4chan, and we need to go put you Old Yeller style.
Sure, but you'd at least look into it. You wouldn't immediately dismiss it just out of hand. You might laugh and say, okay, that's silly. But you'd at least give it a look.
I mean, I'd read the thing because you've given me a book and it's not immediately offensive to everything about literature. But I'm not sure there's, reading the story does not mean I'm going to take it seriously. Maybe as a joke, I'd throw it out there to friends and be like, hey, let's try to do overly Illuminati symbolism nonsense on this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fanfic, and see if we can find the coordinates to great treasure. And I would not expect to find anything. I'd think it was a joke played on me.
I think that's just kind of the position that Harry and friends are in, where they have this level of trust in Dumbledore
Well,
And-
there's also another difference here that Harry and company have that we don't. They already have it confirmed the existence of Horcruxes and have it known for certain that Voldemort has hidden them and that Dumbledore has been trying to destroy them. That is not something any of us have, and quite frankly, if I did know somebody who had, like, oh yeah, it has been my goal to gather up these very specific things that are connected to this one person, that might be grounds for a restraining order in most situations. But it's amazing how much the context of a fantasy novel shifts things.
That's also fair, yeah. But, yeah, my basic idea is that if you had a reason, an already extant reason to believe that, even as silly as it may sound, this is something that you should give at least halfway credence to, you might be more inclined to buy into whatever the suggested idea or course of action is than you would if it was just somebody who dropped it down on you out of nowhere. And I think that's kind of the point the point I'm trying to make. Well, I know that's kind of the point I'm trying to make, because
there's also the fact that Harry is so desperate to still have Dumbledore's guidance in some way that I think even if Dumbledore had just given him a napkin with, like, order this at Burger King on it, he'd have done it for the hope that there might be a clue, even if it's just Dumbledore giving a recommendation to have some chicken fries. Like, Harry is directionless. He doesn't know where to start looking. He honestly desperately wants Dumbledore's help, even though it's not going to be coming anymore. So, I think he's in a position to be looking for literally any breadcrumb he can find.
which can be extremely unhealthy in a lot of ways to be that desperate. But at the same time, it also points him towards figuring out the puzzle that Dumbledore has set before him. There you are.
Which I think, again, is going to circle back to the power of stories. This works because of the genre we're in. This would not work in most situations, but because Harry happens to be the protagonist of a fantasy novel who has already been looking for things of this type, and he desperately needs this, of course it's going to work out. It's just the nature of the beast. And, well, how many myths are like that, where in the darkest hour when all hope is lost, you find something you need? Power of myth.
I mean, it's a core part of so many storytelling styles.
There you go. And honestly, after that meta note, I'm not really sure where to go from here.
Well, it looks like we will be stopping there and picking up next time with taking on this weird little robot thing.
I like robots. Next time. Bye.
See ya.